Hi guys, and welcome back to another Brilliant Games. Today we're looking at a match between two of the greatest chess players of all time, Garry Kasparov and Anatoly Karpov. These two players were dominating the 20th century, and some say that they're the best chess players that ever were. So in this match, Anatoly Karpov and Garry Kasparov, they're playing the World Championship match in 1985, and this was held in Moscow. Karpov has the white pieces and Kasparov has the black pieces. So Karpov starts out with e4. Garry Kasparov responds with c5. This is the Sicilian defense. Knight f3, e6, d4, and cd4 takes. Knight c6, knight b5, d6, c4, and knight f6. Knight to c3, a6, knight a3, and now an interesting gambit, d5. This is where black sacrifices a pawn in the middle, and the hopes of this position is that black will ultimately tie down white's pieces. You can already see white's pieces aren't placed that well. For example, this knight on a3. So this is what Kasparov is trying to go for. Takes. So Karpov accepts the gambit, knight to b4, and now bishop to e2. This is Karpov's new move, trying to surprise Kasparov, but Kasparov has already a surprise waiting. Bishop to c5. This is an interesting move that's outside of theory, but unfortunately it can be refuted. Castles. Here there's a slight inaccuracy. The refutation to this idea, bishop to c5, is bishop to e3. Here after takes and takes, not takes and takes, you play queen to a4 check, and you take, let's say bishop d7, you take the b4 knight. And after here, black has lost the right to castle, and white will get quick development and has full compensation, even though black has played the gambit. So, castles, and bishop to f3, defending the pawn. And now bishop to f5, a great move by Kasparov. Here, preventing the a3 knight from rerouting back to c2, and also supporting the knight advance to d3. Bishop to g5, and now rook to e8, another good move, controlling the open file. And now you notice that black is carrying out his plan of tying down white's pieces very slowly and quietly, very smooth, and it's disguising the fact that white needs to play very accurately now to not fall into a bind. Queen to d2. Here, instead of rook e8, if Kasparov played like b5 for example, then bishop to e4, and this will dissolve black's initiative, and white is just up a clean pawn. Queen to d2. You see, white should be trying to return the material here, trying to return the extra pawn, but he doesn't sense the danger he's in, so he just played a lazy move, queen to d2. Here, Kasparov, knowing that he has to clamp on white's position, plays another great move, b5. Here, rook a to d1 after that, and knight to d3. You see, you just built on the d file, so I'm just going to shut you off with my brilliant octopus knight here. This knight is extremely powerful, covering all the squares and just being an annoyance to white. Knight a to b1. Now this is already a mistake because white is now moving backwards, trying to reroute his pieces, and it's just too slow. He doesn't understand the danger he's in. h6, a well-timed thrust, because now the bishop cannot drop back to e3. If it does, then it'll just get taken, and white's pawn structure will be ruined. So bishop to a4. Now b4. You see, Kasparov is just advancing on both sides, h6, b4, pushing white's pieces back. Knight to a4, and now bishop to d6. You know, the most amazing thing about this position is that Kasparov said that he had reached this position in his notes, which demonstrated the extraordinary preparation that these top-level grandmasters have. Like, this is 19 moves in, and he had this position in his notes. This is just extraordinary how he could, like, look at all the combinations. Bishop to d3, and now another great move, rook to c8. Now you notice black's rooks are, both of his rooks are controlling the open files, and white is looking a little bit cramped. Here, if black played instead knight to e4, then hoping that that after after he takes this bishop, then there will be knight to g3, and then you attack this and this. Well, instead, white would just take your knight here, and queen to e3, and here white is completely fine. The knight can now jump to c5. There's also rook takes c3 now, so black has his initiative dissolved right here. b3. So instead of that, after rook c8, Karpov played b3, intending to reroute his knight to b2. Now that Kasparov knows, okay, my opponent wants to play knight b2, how will he stop his opponent's plan? Because he doesn't want to give his opponent any activity. So Kasparov does this by playing the brilliant move, g5! This brilliant positional move is extraordinary because it prevents knight b2 in a very, very tactical way. And you might say, what, g5? What does this even do? Knight b2, we can just play knight b2, right? This does absolutely nothing. Well, you see, the problem with knight b2 now is after takes, you can play g4, bishop must slide back to e2, and now rook down to c2, and the e2 bishop is lost. Now, this is amazing, how he saw this tactical combination from such a random-looking move, like g5, out of nowhere. What does this even do? And if you say, well, I'm just going to save my bishop first, with bishop to e2 first, like this, then that's also a mistake, because after knight to e4, takes, black wins another piece, as e2 bishop will now drop, and there's a discovered attack on the queen. So after g5, Karpov realized, oh no, I'm in trouble. This is a bad position. So he decides first things first, he needs to make room for his f3 bishop, takes on d6, and now g3. Now the bishop can drop back to g2. Now black has to prevent knight to b2 again, so he plays, you guessed it, knight to d7. You see, knight to d7, again, it seems to do absolutely nothing. I can play knight b2 again, right? Why doesn't it work? Well, because of a very nice move, queen to f6. Here, queen to f6 targets both the knight, and it sees down to f2. Let's say knight d3, and you might say, well, that just wins a piece. I mean, I'm so good. So here you will actually play a bishop d3, f3 takes back on d3, there's this move knight to e5. And it looks amazing, but in fact, the queen is completely trapped. There is no good square for the queen for it to be saved, and the queen is lost. This is quite a remarkable sequence of this quiet move, queen to f6, and after a few moves, the white queen gets trapped. So instead of that, after bishop g2 and queen after bishop to g2, Karpov doesn't fall for this knight b2 trap, so he plays bishop g2, and then Kasparov anyway plays queen to f6. Now there is no knight b2, and white is completely stranded. He's completely tied down and helpless, and the a4 knight is permanently out of the game. a3, trying to break through. Now, a big mistake here would be opening up the pieces for white. Instead, you should play a5, keeping it shut. Now, this knight has no good move, this knight has no good moves. Yeah, white is in a lot of trouble. Queen to a2. Now, Karpov wants to play knight d2. So, what does Kasparov do? Again, stops his plan with bishop to g6. Because now, if you play knight to d2, then rook to e2, and all that pressure on f2, it's gonna crack, and f2 will fall, and so will white's position. So instead of that, after bishop to g6, Karpov plays d6, trying to return the pawn. Well, the problem here is black can't take the pawn, because if you take the pawn and accept the return material, then white can just play knight d2, and white would start regaining his chances. So instead of that, Kasparov shuts down the door even more with g4, nailing down the light squares around the white's king. Now, queen to d2. You notice the queen goes to a2 and d2 now, having served no purpose. Now the queen attacks on h6, so Kasparov, cool, calm, and collected, king to g7. There is no rush. Black can just simply defend his pawn, and black is completely strangling white. White has no good moves. So here, Karpov, low on time, having a horrible position, decides to break through with the move f3. this move will break open his position a bit more, but at the expense of white's king. So here, takes on d6, takes on g4, and here, queen d4 check, king h1, and knight to f6. Another great move, targeting white's weaknesses, taking on g4 or heading into e4. Rook f4, guarding against g4. So since we can't go here, we'll go the other way, knight to e4. Now you might say, oh, well, you're so stupid, I can just take it free knight. Well, no, actually, because now there's knight to f2 check, and then it's a fork on your queen. Now you notice that this knight has stayed here for a very long time, for most of the game, in fact. And this octopus knight, I call it an octopus because it is literally seeing everything. It is clamping down white's position, and for most of the game, it like completely shut down white's position. And now that it's finally lost, black can now finish off the game with some tactics. Knight f2 check, rook f2, the queen is lost, rook f d2, now trying to line up some pressure. But now Kasparov shows excellent tactical vision with queen to e3. If you take the free piece, then rook to c1 now, pinning the rook. If you take my queen here, then I will simply play the move rook d1, and after bishop f1, I can just take your rook, and you're completely pinned down, all your pieces will be lost. So after rook c1, knight to b2, trying to save both rooks, but now queen to f2, another great move, coming down on second rank. If you take on c1, then rook e1 is mate very soon, so knight to d2 instead, but here just simply takes on d1, knight d1, rook e1 check, and checkmate will follow very soon. So the key point of this game is that one well-placed piece, in this case the d3 knight, can make your position work wonders, and also maintaining a bind on your opponent, like stifling their play, isn't about like completely suffocating them on all fronts. It's about identifying his active possibilities and just shutting them out. For example, in this game, Karpov wanted to play knight b2, but here Kasparov completely shut them down with a lot of tactical ideas. Remember, g5 and knight to d7. So also furthermore, if you're playing Karpov, I would say try to be more prepared to sacrifice material back to your opponent so that you don't get completely shut down and binded. If you need proof of this, just look at white's position in this game. I mean, it was completely terrible. So, thank you for watching this video. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next Brilliant Games.